In this video, we're going to be talking about special products. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to identify shortcuts for multiplying polynomials. You should be able to find the square of sums and differences and the products of a sum for a difference. Special products are shortcuts for FOIL. There are three of them. We have what is known as the square of a sum. So when we have a binomial such as x plus 2 and we square it, then we have the square of a difference. So same thing, but now instead of adding it, we have subtraction. And then we have the product of a sum and a difference. That's when we have the same thing in both binomials, but one is adding and one is subtracting. The first special product that we have, which is square of a sum, allows us to square the first term. So when we see the square of a sum, the special rule that we have here is that we can square the first term. We can take 2 times the first and the second term. So multiply them together and multiply that by 2. And that's going to be our second term. And then the last term is going to be plus the square of the second term. So when we look at a plus b squared, what this allows us to do is it says, hey, look at the first term and square it, and that's going to be the first term of your trinomial. So a squared is a squared. To get the middle term, it says, okay, combine these, so ab, and then multiply that by 2, so plus 2ab. And then we look at the last term, b squared, and we square it, and we get b squared. So what it allows us to do is it says, hey, you can take the square of the first term, multiply the first and the second term by 2 to get your middle term, and then square the last term, square the second term to get the third term in your trinomial. Again, if we look at the same thing, we look at x plus 7 squared. To get the first term, we square x, so x squared. To get the second term, we do x 2 times x and 7, so that's 2 times x and 7, so that would be 14x. And then to get the third term, we would square 7, so 7 squared, which would end up being 49. So our simplified trinomial would be x squared plus 14x plus 49. Now our second rule, our second special product, is when we square a difference. Now the special thing about squaring a difference is it's the same exact thing as what we just did. So it's the same thing as squaring a sum. The only difference is going to be that instead of the middle term being added, the middle term will be subtracted because our binomial is subtraction. So, again, you're going to square the first term, but instead of plus 2 times the first and the second term, you're going to do minus 2 times the first and the second term. And then it'll be plus the square of the second term. So again, the exact same thing that we just did before, but now instead of adding, we're going to have subtraction for the middle term. And then our last one is called product of a sum and a difference. So again, this is when you have the same thing in your binomials, but one is adding and one is subtracting. So we take the square of the first term, so a times a, so we multiply the first terms together. So a times a, that's a squared, minus the square of the second term, so b times b, which is b squared. And there will be no middle term. So if we have the product of a sum and a difference, it won't be a trinomial, it'll be another binomial. But that binomial will be the square of the first term minus the square of the second term. And there will be no middle term. Remember that when we have numbers, such as 3, and when we square 3, we do have to simplify that part. And so remember that 3 squared would end up being 9. Okay, let's look at the first example here. So we want to simplify this. What we notice is that this is the square of a sum. So remember, the square of a sum tells us to do a couple of things. It tells us to first square the first term. So we're going to square the first term. So our first term is y. So I square that. So y squared. Then it says plus 2 times the first and second term. So the first term, remember, was y. The second term, remember, was 6. So we have 2 times y times 6. And then plus the square of the second term. So my second term again was 6. So plus the square of that, plus 6 squared. And then all that's left to do is simplify. Y squared remains y squared. 2y, 2 times y times 6 becomes 12y. And 6 squared becomes 36. In this next one, we have the product of a sum and a difference. So remember that when we do a product of a sum and a difference, there's going to be no middle term. So it says square the first term. So the first term in both was a, so a squared would be the square of that. And square the second term, well, the square of 3 and the square of negative 3 is both, the square of 3 is 3, but we're subtracting, so minus 3 squared. Again, the other way that you can look at it is when we do a product, when we do the square of a product and a difference, what you can do is just multiply the first terms together and multiply the second terms together. So a squared minus 3 squared. And we can simplify this. Remember that 3 squared can be simplified down to 9. This next one, we have the square of a difference. So when we have the square of a difference, again, remember that we're taking the square of the first term. So the square of the first term would be 9w squared, because remember we have to square 3 and w, so 9w squared. Then it says 2 times, so minus, this is the difference, minus 2 times the first term, which is 3w, and the second term, which is 7. And then plus the square of the second term. Remember, this is the exact same thing that we do for the square of a sum. The only difference is that the middle term is now being subtracted instead of being added. 9w squared is simplified, so we're good there. Minus 2 times 3, which is 6, times 7, which is 42, so minus 42w, plus 7 squared, which is 49. And then our last one is, again, is the product of a sum and a difference. And so remember that there will be no middle term here. We're squaring the first term, so multiplying the first terms together, which would be 16x squared. So multiply the second terms together, which would be minus 81. So that would be your simplified answer. These are our special products, our shortcuts for FOIL. Hopefully you found this video helpful. Again, please subscribe to the channel so you get updates as new videos are released, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.